Wimberly, and I'm reading from A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. Jefferson's Louisiana Purchase had doubled the territory of the United States, extending it to the Rocky Mountains. To the southwest was Mexico, which had won its independence in a Revolutionary War against Spain in 1821. A large country, which included Texas and what are now New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, Arizona, California, and part of Colorado. After agitation and aid from the United States, Texas broke off from Mexico in 1836, and declared itself the Lone Star Republic. In 1845, the U.S. Congress brought it into the Union as a state. In the White House now was James Polk, a Democrat, an expansionist, who, on the night of his inauguration, confided to his Secretary of the Navy that one of his main objectives was the acquisition of California. His order to General Taylor to move troops to the Rio Grande was a challenge to the Mexicans. It was not at all clear that the Rio Grande was the southern boundary of Texas, although Texas had to force the defeated Mexican General Santa Anna to say so when he was a prisoner. The traditional border between Texas and Mexico had been the Neches River, about 150 miles to the north, and both Mexico and the United States had recognized that as the border. However, Polk, encouraging the Texans to accept annexation, had assured them that he would uphold their claims to the Rio Grande. Ordering troops to the Rio Grande into territory inhabited by Mexicans was clearly a provocation. Taylor had once denounced the idea of the annexation of Texas, but now that he had his marching orders, his attitude seemed to change. His visit to the tent of his aide Hitchcock to discuss the move is described in Hitchcock's diary. He seems to have lost all respect for Mexican rights, and is willing to be an instrument of Mr. Polk for pushing our boundary as far west as possible. When I told him that, if he suggested a movement, which he told me he intended, Mr. Polk would seize upon it and throw the responsibility on him, he said at once he would take it, and added that if the president instructed him to use his discretion, he would ask no orders, but would go upon the Rio Grande as soon as he could get transportation. I think the general wants an additional brevet and would strain a point to get it. Taylor moved his troops to Corpus Christi, Texas, just across the Neches River, and waited further instructions. They came in February 1846, to go down the Gulf Coast to the Rio Grande. Taylor's army marched in parallel columns across the open prairie, scouts far ahead and on the flanks, a train of supplies following. Then, along a narrow road, through a belt of thick chaparral, they arrived, March 28, 1846, in cultivated fields and thatched roof huts hurriedly abandoned by the Mexican occupants, who had fled across the river to the city of Matamoros. Taylor set up camp, began construction of the fort, and implanted his cannons facing the white houses of Matamoros, whose inhabitants stared curiously at the sight of an army on the banks of a quiet river. The Washington Union, a newspaper expressing the position of President Polk and the Democratic Party, had spoken early in 1845 on the meaning of Texas annexation. Let the great measure of annexation be accomplished, and with it the question of boundaries and claims. For who can arrest the torrent that will pour onward to the west? The road to California will be open to us.